So the curious thing about mezcal de campanilla is that it existed outside the hacienda. So it was a mezcal of resistance against the haciendas. Which nowadays there are haciendas who have mezcal de campanilla, which is absolutely absurd. Because I mean it doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
You could justify that you got a producer of mezcal de campanilla and took him into hacienda and justify that way, but it's still unjustifiable. So yeah, well that was kind of my experience with mezcal de campanilla, and at the end we are friends. We're good friends, at least with Daniel and his family. With Don Enrique, who was his father. We produced 2 years, which is the mezcal that I have. I've been saving it in glass. I kind of, well, for a while I didn't feel very comfortable selling it as mezcal de campanilla, because I wanted to respect what they gave me and what I gave them. And I talked with the producers a few years ago, and I said, well, I might sell it. Are you okay with me selling it and giving you as a reference? And he said, yeah, well, I mean, it's your mezcal. I mean, you paid for it, it's yours, so do whatever you want. So yeah, that was my initial like distilling approach. And in 2017, I started to get on my own path. So I started distilling some pulque, which is not very convenient.
Why is not very convenient?
It has a very low ABV, so pulque is not going to be over 6% alcohol. So I mean, why would you want to distill something that's only going to give you 6%?
Yeah.
So it's not a very doable.
Is distilling pulque a thing?
There are some brands that are distilling pulque, but I think it's because they're in. They have their own plantations of agave, and they do pulque, so it would be reasonable if you got too much production, and pulque is not very sellable now. I mean, it's getting there, it's incrementing every day, it's getting popularity again, but for many years it was considered a very low quality, fermented with shit. And
before the 1970s, the nationalization of Corona and Cerveza, pulque was what people drank.
In the 20s, when the cerveceria
Corona came and people.
I mean, you can imagine the beer company saying, I mean, who's getting all the money? I mean, the pulquero's getting all the money. Why aren't the big corporations getting it? So they invented La Muñeca, that they call it, that they said that pulque was fermented in a sock full of shit. I mean, which is completely ridiculous. You don't need shit to ferment. I mean, it's ridiculous, But it was something that really pregnated into society, and they thought it was a very low quality product, so they had to stop it, So I mean, when Porfirio Diaz was president, they talked about un pulque duct, a pulque duct. That could transport from Hidalgo to Mexico City through a pipeline.
No shit.
Pulque.
So Porfirio Diaz supported the pulque production in a sense.
In a certain sense, yeah.
There was going to be a pulque pipeline.
A pulque pipeline.
No fuck.
Check that, Elon Musk.
But
what were you gonna say?
That ended when things changed with the beer companies. So it had a shift.
It calls my attention, I think in the, like, we tend to hear, and again, like, numbers are not the forte of a bunch of the guys we interview in the mezcal world, right? But you're, like, the mosto, my understanding is tends to be, like, 6% alcohol once it's ready to go into distillation. And that is not far away from the 6% that you're talking about pulque. So that's completely incorrect.
Completely.
How much will a mosto have in Campanilla, for example?
Well, when we were there, we used to get 18 bricks, which should be around
18 bricks.
18 bricks, which converted into ABVs would be approximately like an 8 to 10%.
Okay.
More or less, like 22 bricks is 10%, so say 18 bricks would be 8%, 9%. It depends on the agave. Agaves in Oaxaca give you 22 to 27 bricks, which would be like 12 to. Sorry about that.
No,
that's great.
Get out of here. It would be like 12 to 15%. So that's why mezcals in Oaxaca have better production than Salmiana. Like say tequila, you need from 7 to 12 kilos a liter. and with Salmiana you need from 17 to 22 kilos a liter. So there's a big difference. Aguamiel comes out at probably 5% ABV. So pulques, you're never going to get a pulque that's over 7% alcohol, and you're risking getting into acidity. So pulque has a natural line that goes from sweet to acid in less than 4 or 5 days. Now it's a very quick fermentation. So that's kind of like where you have to get into it. If you distill something very acidy, then you're going to get off flavors. If you distill something very sweet, you'll get off flavors too, and you'll get very low yields. So
anytime you're dealing with pulque, you're dealing with a logistical nightmare.
Completely. Yeah.
And that's why it's not scalable, and that's why we're not drinking pulque, is because there's no money in it.
Yeah, well, there could be money. I think it's a product that many people are looking to get that out of Mexico. Fortunately, it cannot be done unless you pasteurize it, and you lose all its properties. So it's always been on the mind of big corporations, pulque, but it's just something impossible to achieve. So if you put it in a can and you put it into freeze, and it'll still blow up. So it's not an easy product.
So Tomas, whiskey's not very popular production-wise in Mexico. How far back does the tradition of making whiskey go? And then what's your story into coming into the position you have of becoming a whiskey expert and producer?
Okay, well, I think the first question would be why Mexico doesn't have a whiskey, being the kings of corn. We eat it.
Tortillas.
We eat it. No, we've never had any necessity to convert it into anything else but to the top and most nutritious food there is from grain. So I think that would be the first step, to say we eat it. We're not looking to convert it into anything else than to food. And thanks to nixtamalization.
But Mexico has excess corn production, no? They don't need all the corn to feed people.
That's kind of the new. Now when you have an overproduction, there's no pricing for it. Many original seeds have been kept away from big corporations. Transgenics, modified corn. You see it in the States. All the corn that they produce in the States is for animals. It's not for human consumption. So different to Mexico, all our corns are for human consumptions, and very little are for actually animals. It would be a waste to give it to the animals and not feed our people with corn. So that was kind of my first approach to it. There is this black legend that they call it. In the 20s, in Prohibition, a company, I'll try to remember the company's name. It's two surnames together. They go into Tijuana, and they build a whiskey company in Tijuana to produce in Mexico and then put into the illegal market during Prohibition. The black legend is that Al Capone would come into Mexico, buy this whiskey, and take it into the States.
I heard quite a bit about this.
Yeah.
Mexico and Canada both up in their production during the
Prohibition. So the whiskey factory is still standing in Tijuana. There's still the black legend. I think it's not that of a nice legend for Tijuana, because it represents all the violence and illegal and all that. That's something that's constant in our culture.
So would you say the Prohibition is what jump-started whiskey production? That's the roots of whiskey production in Mexico? Is that
well, it would be the first...
the catalyst that really...
the first step that was made. But then after Prohibition, the factory closed and went back to producing in the States. So it ended up as a legend. And the factory is still there to have that legend on hand. But after that, it stopped. I think all the production in Mexico has been over tequila and over mezcal recently, and bacanora, sotol, and all these other beverages that are coming out into the market. but mainly I think tequila was the product that Mexico got into hand and said, this is what we're going to do. No, we're not going to do any other things. No, so this is our main product. No? And Mexico's been famous for its tequila production. No? In recent years, I think the possibility or the over extractions of agave, no, have made the same producers that are already making spirits turn to other products, to other fermentables. So I think that it was logical to turn around into grains, no? Stop looking at agave, which is getting quite unsustainable, no? In the tequila business. It's going to get there in the mezcal business too. No? There's just so much going on. No? There's the huge corporations are coming in, no? With famous people having new brands. No? So that's happening. In 2019 was the first time I heard about a whiskey, Mexican whiskey with Abasolo whiskey. Abasolo, well, it's part of a huge company of Montelobos Mezcal, Ancho Reyes, now Abasolo and Nixta, and now they're going into Sotol. No? So it's this big corporation that has all the money and resources to start looking at new products. No? If it's good or bad, I don't know. We'll have to see in the future, no, how this impacted in society and in productions of different spirits. No? But I think it woke a certain curiosity of what could happen if we actually went into corn. No? When I first saw Abasolo, I was intrigued of their recipe that they say they use nixtamalization and corn, so that was kind of like the first thing that attracted me. I got into some groups of moonshine in the States, which have been very, very helpful. I can't stop mentioning them because, well, honestly, that's where I got kind of a lot of my information and a lot of my knowledge. These guys are absolutely amazing in sharing. They want to share, they want to give to others what they've learned and what's been passed on through generations in the production of moonshine. So when I approached these mentors, that I call them, I said, well, I've got Mexican corn whiskey, what would you do with it? And they said, shit, anything. No, I mean, you've got the best corn in the world, why not produce it? No? So my head started turning around, and I said, "Oh wow! No, I was distilling prickly pear, which was my second distill.
Tuna.
Tuna. And
tuna.
I found
is tuna.
That's tuna. All right. I found that it could represent a very difficult task to position tuna. Calling it prickly pear. So, say in Australia in the 70s, they introduced nopal to help climate change, and then in the 80s, mid-80s, beginning of the 90s, they used to pay people to bulldoze the shit out of the tunas because they were just getting completely out of control. So if you ask an Australian what do you think about prickly pear, they'll say, oh shit, get away from that. No? In the States, if you go up and say, oh, this is a tuna distillate, they'll think of a fish. No?
That's what I thought when I saw your label. I'm like,
yeah, so
confused with tuna fish.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's a marketing challenge.
Yeah. So that I thought that, oh well, I have to think on something else. I'm converting the prickly pear into a gin-based prickly pear spirit, which you'll try in a while, which is promising. I think for the gin industry to have another base spirit apart from potato or grains or even alcohol, even sugarcane, giving another base spirit for a gin, I think that can be a new thing. So I've made my experiments too with gin. I've made a rum-based gin, and a prickly pear-based gin.
Let's talk. How did you come into? What's your story? What's your story into becoming a chemist, a scientist in distillates?
Well, I think that I was drawn into the mezcal world. I think that was the first thing that got me going. Going to Oaxaca, I had different attempts to get producers to work with me. Some resulted good, some didn't. I met this guy who's called Luis Mendez. He wasn't a mezcalero. He was engineer. He used to build bridges and water systems for mezcal, and so he started planting tobala, and he recuperated the plant, and he got a prize for it by the UN. And I met him back in 2012. We tried to make business together. We planted some agaves, and at the end he died of a heart attack. I still do business with his kids, no, but that was like my first step, no. And then in Campanilla, well, I learned so much, no, and then I had to stop because I think they had their own project to defend. No, they had to defend themselves of what they were, and for me, being an external person to the community, no, which I was very well received. I appreciate them a lot. No, I learned a lot. No, but I kind of thought, well, I mean, I've learned so much. Why would I just put it into a drawer and close it, no, and just have it just to talk about it, no? So from there, I bought a small still, a 9-liter still, started doing experiments. Only got like 1.5 liters out of it, no? And from there, well, I got the bravery enough to say, well, now I'm going to buy a 300-liter still and see what I do now, no? So came into here, which was my dad's factory back in the 80s, no, which had to close down because of NAFTA. No?
So your dad wasn't involved in distillates?
No.
What was the factory?
He used to do inner tubes for bicycles. But with NAFTA and the Chinese coming through the US and this bad business that was NAFTA to Mexico, there's no way to compete, so he had to close down.
Do you have negative opinions of NAFTA? Or do you
Come on, Dalton, don't fucking get into that.
Well,
I'm just having a combo.
I think that I mean, free commerce is good. No, I mean, but
winners and losers.
Oh yeah. No, I mean,
some industries benefit
yeah.
north.
US and Canada will never be the losers.
Yeah.
So I mean, that resumes probably everything. No, there's some people who are benefited by NAFTA. Some will not be ever. No, competition is hard. That's global commerce.
NAFTA totally disrupted the Oaxacan agriculture system.
Yeah.
Where they couldn't compete in terms of. Basically, now all production is just for the local community.
Yeah.
Because you got the big factory corn producers and stuff sending corn to Mexico.
Yep.
That's wild. So, what was your background in education-wise? And do you have a bit of a Scottish accent? Am I picking up?
No, my mother's Australian.
Australian. Okay.
Yeah, I lived in England for a while, so I got a bit of an English accent, and but no Scottish. So so from there, well, I started experimenting. I got into these groups of moonshine that got me into malting. That was my first bump to get over, trying to malt grains, which I didn't know anything about. I once heard this phrase that said, "You don't need to have a past to have a future." So that really hit me. So I said, "Well, shit, I might not be I might not be of a line of distillers, but why not start now?" No, so probably my kids will be the next generation, and their kids will be the next. No, hopefully, they'll get into the craft. Mainly, I like the idea of producing for myself. No, the idea of producing your own spirits gets you into a certain zone that you won't drink any shit anymore. So
you like to drink? So
not really.
Oh, really?
No, I'm not that good of a drinker because I've never found anything that I really liked.
Even your own products?
Oh yeah, I'll drink them, but they say don't consume your own poison.
Yeah.
So
or in the US, don't get high from your own supply.
Exactly. And I mean, I've got a 12-year-old bar, so when we opened the bar, our first rule was we're not going to be the drunk owners of a bar. No, I think that's horrible and awful when you get to a bar and the owner's just pissed, and so that was like my first rule for myself.
And education-wise, no chemical engineer degree, no.
Well, I studied communications. I had a publicity agency in a while. I used to do radio. I used to do TV ads. Then I got into the film industry. I was involved in some movies, mainly in locations. So I used to go around all San Luis, go to haciendas, go to different old towns, take pictures. So when big productions came to San Luis, to the film, what do you call it? To the film society or whatever they call it here, they used to call me and say, oh, they want to make an old movie, so they need an hacienda. This is what they think they can get. So I used to come with my photos, my pictures, and well, this is what I got. This is the owner, and I got into 3 movies that got me economically up, and I opened my bar. And from there, I left the movies, got into the bar, and
So, as-
native corn is in the rise. I think it's being reevaluated. Yep.
You can keep talking. I'll listen.
So I think if we defend our seeds, which is something very important. Big corporations want to control seeds. If Mexico can combat that and have its own seeds, we'll have a better product to compete to whoever tries to compete with us. So as long as we keep our seeds protected and our genetics protected in those seeds, which big corporations have tried to steal and trying to get a hold of, we'll be in the competing zone and we'll be rescuing those seeds. If we let big corporations come and overtake our corn productions, then we are only going to be producing genetically modified corns that will not yield again. So you're going to have to be buying and buying and buying and buying, which is the business of big corporations. So that's what they want. I think it's going to be very difficult to domesticate Mexican corns. There will be a very hard oppositions. Like big companies like Monsanto and Bayer and all those. They're trying to get a hold of our native corns. The actual president is trying to stop it. There's a lot of things going on. Like say junk food. Junk food was just reevaluated, and now every single thing you buy has labeling on it that says high content of all these rubbish that we're consuming.
Michelle Obama tried getting stuff like that passed in the U.S.
Yep.
Those big corporations shut
Exactly.
that shit down quick.
Yeah.
And she said, "Let's exercise."
Yeah. I have an uncle who's the main director of this organization that's trying to modify, and he was the one who got this passed in Congress to all the junk food have the label on it. And now recent investigations say he was spied with Pegasus, this spying Israeli technology that spied on politics, anyone that had an opinion against big corporations, they were spied on. So my uncle was actually spied on with this thing about junk food. So there are people trying to combat big corporations, and what they're doing, especially with seeds. I think corn has to be really defended, like with teeth and fingernails, we say, to stop big corporations. And the best way to do it is, well, one, respect our seeds, and two, trying to find a way to convert our seeds into a high-end product, which is whiskey. That's kind of my main motivation. All my corns are 100% organic, 100% original Mexican traditional seeds. I will not go into hybrid seeds. I will not go into transgenic seeds. I'm looking for high quality. Like say, the corn in the US has been modified so it can be 100% starch, and our corns still have 60% starch and 40% all the other nutrients in it. So big corporations are trying to get that out of the corn, and we're trying to maintain it. So say in the Huasteca, which is the tropical zone in San Luis, like San Luis is divided into 4 zones. It looks like a dog. So the head of the dog is desert, the heart of the dog is semi-desert, which is San Luis, and then like the back, like the middle part of the dog is semi-tropical, and then the back part of the dog is tropical.
Very diverse.
So we've got
and
four different zones,
Ecosystems.
4 different ecosystems. So up in north, which is desert, they plant what they call temporal. So if it rains, they plant. If it doesn't rain, there's no water. They don't have any wells. So the seed has been harvested in a way that the seed has got used to small amounts of water. So that is one type of seed. And then tropical, in the tropical areas, the seed is watered. So there's different types of seed, different types of corn. There's 64 types of corns in Mexico, plus there are more than 300 variations, depending on soil, altitude, etc. So we've got, genetically speaking, we've got one of the grains that has most like amplitude in genetics, which is something that I insist has to be protected, and we have to really have it in consideration. It's like agave, like tequila has always been taking out the huelos of the same agave that they've been planting since the 1920s. So they haven't let the agave genetically modify itself to climate change. So that's why the crisis in agave in 94 to 2002 was because one tiny little insect got into it and it just completely almost vanished the industry. With mezcal is another thing, but now we've got monocultivations. We are cutting down trees to plant agaves. We're taking out cactuses to plant agaves. So I think it's for me, it's a way to get out of that industry that it will be unsustainable in a while, and get into something that can be more sustainable and more socially conscious, and that can be more beneficial for more producers, small scale producers, indigenous producers, and it's more beneficial for Mexicans and for my country than it would be insisting in doing a monocultivation.
Awesome.
So that's my main reason to insist on